We've got Coach Filieo tonight. Going to talk on, basically building a program right from the ground up. Did a great job at Cape Elizabeth. Took that thing basically from birth, right to state championship contender on a pretty regular basis. Moved over to South Portland and took over a situation there that was looking pretty bleak a couple of years ago, and had a pretty quick turnaround there, and certainly. With the numbers he has and the atmosphere going on over there, he's definitely doing it the right way. So a lot to be learned, and Coach, appreciate you coming on and looking forward to this.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Appreciate the appreciate the work that you're doing, obviously, with with this, and I think one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, Mike, was actually creating some sort of a folder or some sort of a cache of all the videos that I've seen throughout this experience, where you get a lot of coaches that have hit upon really all the stuff that I would talk about as far as the things that we've done, at Cape and over the last 15 years. And, like Coach Rotzko did one, on the other, not on this channel, but on another channel on having a, championship, mentality and attitude, which is a key part of, our philosophy. Coach Roach did the team chemistry and kind of the family bonding, which is huge for us. Coach Morin did a great session on connecting high school with youth. And that's a big piece for us as well. And, Coach Soren did one on youth, practice organization. And so, all those pieces are a part of, what I would and will kind of touch on to present in terms of what we've done. And so I think, and then you're going to do something on structuring your coaching staff, right? And so how to
I'm going to do that at the end.
Right. And so, and that's something that is a big part of, what I sort of call our blueprint, but really it's the blueprint. And so if I refer to it as my blueprint, just understand, it's really the blueprint for building a successful program. And so, so all those different components are there and present and out there. And I think maybe putting all those recordings in a place where any new coach or AD that's looking for the right coach, with the right attitude or whatever could, and the right vision, could sort of access that as almost like a starter kit. And there's obviously more things topics that we could cover. So, the other thing that I just wanted to touch on before I kind of get going on our stuff is, and I think, other coaches mention this, but I just think it's worth repeating that football, these days is obviously, as we well know, has been under attack a little bit. And whether it's, from concussions or injuries or a lot of moms kind of having a hard time with their kids playing. And I think, I think that is a part of, why football, particularly in high school, and particularly in the state of Maine, is a little under attack. I think we're getting better, but not only that, I think too that we have to understand that kids have more options available to them. We were just talking about AAU and other things, and so, I think both Coach Rotzko and Coach Roach said in their presentations that, and I'm a big believer in this, and I think, as teachers, we see this every day, that kids are the same. The kids really aren't different, but what they have available to them is different. So the world that they live in is different. So the days of, a head football coach just putting out the sign-up sheet and having kids, 60, 70, kids sign up for football because it's what you did in the fall, and there was no sort of like concern for injury. Those days are over, and they've been over for a while. And so, you couple the fact that kids have other options, other things to do with, the fear of injury. And that makes for a tough situation for us football coaches to really get a football program going. But I contend that, that, football is, first of all, we're doing a lot as far as safety goes. And so, And we've certainly made a lot of progress there. The other piece about having kids, sort of having other options for kids to choose from, I think that what a lot of us have figured out is, football needs to be an experience for the kids. It needs to be more than just the game. And we all love the game and appreciate the game just for what it, for what it is in its simplest form. I think kids now, now they need a little bit more. They need an experience. And so kind of redefining your football program and the football experience, I think, is really important. And so, so those are the way I look at it is those are kind of the two battles that we're kind of fighting. But I think that they're winnable fights. And so, and I think that that's been proven, with a lot of the programs around the state. I think the other issue too is, well, not the other issue, but the other thing that we need to remind ourselves constantly as we try to grow football in the state of Maine is that football is still a huge fan favorite in this country. I mean, it's still a major part of our culture. And I think that, the popularity of football in general has never been higher. I mean, I teach in a soccer lacrosse town. And so I've got a lot of my students come in my classroom every day, and they are, devout soccer kids, but they're talking football. They're not talking soccer. They're talking football. They're talking NFL. They're talking, college players, and they're wearing the jerseys and stuff. And so I think that we should always remind ourselves that football is still an extremely loved and adored pastime in this country. And I think every town in this state, wants a successful football program, and they want something to be proud of, and they want to have someplace to go on a Friday night in the fall. And so using that as sort of like a motivator, I think is certainly helpful. And so, I certainly use that to help me, and I've always used that to know, like, obviously going into Cape, knowing that that's a soccer town 15 years ago, but I also knew that everybody loves football. And so if we could put together a program and a product, that the town could be proud of, that it would go and it would be successful in Cape. And I think that we did that. And so, and obviously South Point is a little bit different because it has rich tradition and pride. And I'll talk a little bit about that too. So just wanted to just kind of put that out there just to say that, we're all fighting the same kind of battle. But I think obviously guys like you, Mike, that have kind of taken the mantle from Coach Haley as far as getting this going, and with the, obviously with the assistance of Skip and Dan and all the other guys. I mean, I think we've got so many talented, passionate coaches in the state that I think that we're sort of inching in the right direction. And I really believe that. And I just think that, I think stuff like this is going to really help, and us continuing to communicate and talk is really going to be important. The only other thing that I would say is, I don't, and I said this in the newspaper, and I almost kind of grabbed that clipping when they interviewed me about 8-man for Chevrolet. And, I do think Chevrolet is in a unique situation. So them going 8-man is certainly, understandable, but, look, if you've got a vibrant, viable student body, I don't think that there's an excuse to not be able to grow your program. I think that there's enough examples out there of what to do. And I think Coach Roach alluded to this a little bit in his talk. It is a lot of work. I mean, it literally consumes me and my whole world. But if you're not ready to kind of get after it and work your butt off to make it happen, then it's probably not going to happen. And so just a little caveat there that I think is important. And that's just what it takes today in 2020. So just kind of looking at what we do, we'll talk about like what we believe. We've got 3 pillars, core principles that we really believe in, what we need. And this is sort of, I presented this, I kind of like manipulated this presentation from a sort of a meet the coaching staff night that we did at South Portland. And so And so I kind of presented this to the community. What we need, we need to have one big family, and that's important. And then how it gets done, we need to communicate like heck, efficiently and effectively, and we need to be organized. We need to have a plan, and so that's kind of how it gets done. And obviously, hard work is sort of it's sort of assumed there. Another piece just before I go is this whole presentation is sort of South Portland football stuff, but these are all the things that that we did in Cape, 15 years ago. And so obviously there's a few differences and a few changes as we've kind of grown and learned and understood things. But essentially, like I said, the main blueprint that we all have sort of put together to build our programs is it's kind of the same. It's pretty similar. So our core principles, I think every football coach can go online and find, these are a dime a dozen. So it's not difficult to come up with these core principles, or you come up with different ones. You have 4 or 5, whatever, 6. But I think the important piece is that whatever your core principles are, you believe in them wholeheartedly, 100%. And, these have not always been our core principles and my core principles. They've certainly evolved over time. But, there was always some sort of version of this. And so it's all built on the foundation of communication. I'm a big believer in that. And so, championship level competitiveness, championship level character, and championship level camaraderie. And so, I kind of look at the competitiveness is exactly what Coach Rotzko talked about when he did his presentation on the other format. It's that mindset. And camaraderie is exactly what Coach Roach talked about, and so we'll talk a little bit about, nuances, from our end of it, but, it's those guys talked about it. And so obviously it's a big part of a successful football program. And I mean, everybody, obviously character is something. And I think Coach Rotzko obviously talked about that. He used the term class. And his kids will do everything with class, and I just choose a different term, but it's the same deal. So the championship level competitiveness. So who's involved in that? Well, tradition and pride. I mean, South Portland. I mean, this is obviously in Cape. We didn't have that, so we had to kind of build that. In South Portland, there is a deep, rich tradition. It's over 100 years old of really a lot of successful football teams and championships and coaches. And so, so we kind of look at sort of the past, and we want to kind of emulate that, and we want to continue to be competitive and fight. We have a gold standard. Our expectation is to win a state championship every year, and that doesn't change. And then obviously, how do you get it done? Well, you never stop working. I mean, it's sort of there's a certain work ethic in terms of to be competitive. And so the competitiveness, as far as and again, Coach Roach talked about this, and every coach will say it. As far as building a program, a successful program, it helps to win. I mean, and so a lot of coaches, I think, they basically might sort of kind of tap out because they say, well, we can't put a winning team together or whatever. Or we're never going to win a state championship, or we just don't have the horses, or the male student body or whatever. And so I don't really think that any of that matters, to be honest with you. And obviously, like in Cape is a great example. The first thing that I said in the meeting, my first player meeting in Cape, which seemed like a long time ago, I guess it was. The very first thing that came out of my mouth was, we're going to win a state championship. And that sent a real clear message to the kids. What's fascinating about that is that we never did, like we never won a state championship. And I think that that's important because it didn't change. It didn't change from year to year. The kids believed it, that I believed it, and I did. And so therefore every single year that was our expectation. And I know that some coaches disagree with that. I mean, some coaches like to set, more realistic, goals, and they're afraid of setting their players up for failure. But I just don't believe that. I think that at the end of the day, at the end of the season, kids feel like they've competed and they've sort of given themselves a fighting chance, that they're going to look back, and they're not going to look at, missing the ultimate prize. They're going to look back at the process. And, obviously I would much rather be sitting here and saying, and not using this as an example in Cape. But I do think it's a good example of setting the expectation of winning a championship. And, and I just think that it certainly has motivated our guys year in and year out. And, so again, this is just our Instagram. Hopefully you guys can see this, but this is a message I posted at the end of our summer session before we went into our 2-week hands off. And you can just kind of see what it says at the very end. Where do you want to be on November 23rd? Everything we do is, Fitzpatrick focus. We just don't, we don't mince words there. And, did our guys know that, Marshwood would be in our way and Kenny Bunk would be in our way? Yeah, of course. And whatever, it doesn't matter. I mean, our goal is to still, win a state championship. And I just think kind of setting that standard, I think is really important for these guys. So, the other thing, just a couple of other quick things as far as competing. We try to compete all the time, and we just try to just make sure our guys understand that we want to, we want our community to be proud of us. And I think, and kind of going back to, sort of programs having to win in order to be successful. I don't know if that's necessarily true as far as winning championships. I mean, in Cape, again, we never won a championship, but we had the full support of the community. They loved coming to watch us play because they knew that we were going to compete. And so I think in building a program and having a vision for a program, being competitive and having that championship level competitiveness should be a major, goal for you as a head coach, because if you build it, they will come, right? I mean, if you put a product on the field where kids are fighting hard, they're fundamentally sound, and they're playing to the whistle, and they're playing 4 quarters, and they're not getting their butts kicked 50-0, and they're not looking at, and the Towns is not looking at the sideline and seeing 25 kids, and they just want to come watch a good football game, and to know that their high school football team gave it their all. That's sort of what I'm talking about, and I really believe that. And the chips are going to fall where they will at the end of the season. And obviously, you hope to win a championship, but I think that the community is pretty forgiving when it comes to that, for the most part. Once you win one, well, then that's a different story. That's a whole other talk that you guys can talk about. But I do think that if you can just kind of strive to put a product on the field that makes the community proud, I think you've kind of hit that mark of championship level competitiveness. And how do you do that? Well, you've got to work your ass off. I mean, you've got to involve your kids in competitive situations. We do this stuff. We work outside in the wintertime and stuff like that, and the community loves it. The kids love it. Just a couple of things that we do. This is a victim extraction. We've got a firefighter EMT on our staff, and he just, I don't know. So get them in teams, and this is last January. Team building. There's a lot of stuff involved in that, just in that one, activity. And so, we do a lot of stuff, as far as, it's a tire flip, relay race that we do. This is more in the springtime, but stuff like this. I mean, this stuff is, that's going to get your kids as a work ethic there, and that's and that's teaching them to compete. And so, and the community, post that on social media, the community loves it. Championship level character. I mean, the